Have you ever stood in a room full of people and understood, in the space of one sentence, that everything you thought was yours had just been taken back? Eleanor Voss understood it at 9:20 on a Tuesday evening in March. In the middle of the Pemberton Assembly Rooms, while the musicians were still playing and the chandeliers were still burning and no one had yet thought to look at her face, the Duke of Ashworth said 4 words. That was all it took. 4 words, a small bow, and then Richard Ashworth turned and walked back toward the card room as if he had done nothing more consequential than decline a second cup of tea. The 4 words were, "We cannot continue this." Eleanor did not move. She was good at not moving. She had spent 23 years learning the particular stillness that well-bred women carry like a second skin, the kind that shows nothing, costs everything, and is mistaken by people who don't know better for composure. She was not composed. She was simply very still. Around her, the assembly continued. Couples turned on the floor. Glasses were lifted and set down. Someone laughed near the fireplace, a bright, uncomplicated laugh that landed on Eleanor's ears like a sound from a different country. She became aware, slowly, that she was still holding her dance card. She had been holding it when Richard arrived. She was holding it now. The pencil that hung from it by a silk cord swayed slightly, and she watched it the way a person watches something small and ordinary when the large and extraordinary thing is too much to look at directly. She had been engaged to Richard Ashworth for 11 months, long enough to have learned the particular way he cleared his throat before speaking in company, long enough to have sat across from his mother at dinner 14 times and memorized the exact pattern of the Ashworth dining room wallpaper, long enough to believe, not with certainty, she had never been foolish enough to claim certainty, but to believe that this particular future was the one she was walking toward. She had been wrong. The question she could not answer, standing there with her dance card and her silk cord pencil and the chandeliers burning indifferently above her, was why. "Miss Voss?" She turned. The man beside her was not Richard. He was shorter than his brother by perhaps 2 inches, darker in coloring, and wearing an expression she could not immediately name, not pity, not quite, but something adjacent to it that he was clearly working to conceal. Edmund Ashworth, the younger brother. She had met him perhaps 6 times over the course of their engagement. He had always been polite. He had never been particularly memorable. He was watching her now with an attention that was, she realized, entirely different from politeness.
"I wondered if you might do me the honor of the next dance."
Eleanor looked at him. The next dance was a waltz. She knew this because she had checked the program 3 times this evening, the way she checked things when she was nervous, and she had been nervous since arriving because Richard had been distant since their last meeting, and she had not yet understood why. She understood why now. Or rather, she understood that there was a why, which was not the same thing at all.
"Mr. Ashworth."
I am aware this is an unusual request. Under the circumstances,
"Under the circumstances" is a generous way to describe it.
it is the most accurate phrase I have available.
There was something in the way he said it, level, without evasion, without the over-solicitous softness that people deploy when they want to seem kind without actually being useful, that made Eleanor look at him more carefully. He was not embarrassed. He was not performing sympathy. He was simply standing there, making a request and waiting. Eleanor had just had the floor pulled out from under her life. She had perhaps 3 minutes before the nearest cluster of women, she could identify them by the angle of their heads, concluded that something had happened, and began moving in her direction with expressions of calculated concern. She took Edmund Ashworth's arm.
"One dance, Mr. Ashworth."
That is all I'm asking for.
It was not a comfortable dance. It was not meant to be. They moved through the figures with the careful precision of 2 people who are using the requirements of form to avoid speaking, and the space between them had the quality of a room in which something important has been left unsaid, and both occupants are aware of it. Edmund led well. She noticed this against her will. Richard had always led with a slight hesitation, a half-beat of uncertainty that she had privately found endearing. Edmund had no such hesitation. He moved as though he had decided something and acted on it, which was either confidence or recklessness, and she was not yet sure which. They were halfway through the figure before he spoke.
I owe you an explanation.
You owe me nothing, Mr. Ashworth. Your brother owes me an explanation. You owe me only the remainder of this dance.
My brother is not going to give you one?
She missed a step. He steadied her, a small, correct adjustment, nothing more, and she recovered, and they continued, and she kept her eyes at a point somewhere past his left shoulder the way she had been taught to do when she needed to think without appearing to think.
Then I will do without one.
That is not what I said.
She looked at him then. His expression had not changed, direct, not unkind, carrying the specific weight of someone who knows more than they are saying and has decided, for reasons of their own, that this is a problem. The music resolved. They separated. He bowed. She curtsied. Around them, couples rearranged themselves for the next figure, and the ordinary machinery of a Regency assembly continued without interruption, as it always did, regardless of what was happening inside the people moving through it. Edmund Ashworth did not return to the card room. He stood where he was, at the edge of the floor, and after a moment Eleanor did something she could not entirely explain. She stayed. If you have ever made a decision that went against everything sensible you knew about yourself, stayed in a room you should have left, asked a question you weren't sure you wanted answered, you will understand something of what Eleanor Voss was doing at that moment. She stayed because the alternative was to go home and sit with 4 words and no explanation. And she had learned in 23 years that the thing you don't understand will follow you regardless. Better to turn and face it.
What did you mean, Mr. Ashworth?
It was not quite a question. He seemed to understand this.
Not here.
Then where?
There's a small sitting room off the east corridor. It is used for coats early in the evening and for nothing at all by this hour.
Eleanor considered him. A sitting room off the east corridor, empty by 9 o'clock, with an unmarried woman and her former fiancé's brother. This was, by any reasonable social measure, a significant risk. She had just lost her engagement in front of the Pemberton Assembly. The reasonable social measures were going to require some recalibration.
5 minutes, Mr. Ashworth.
The corridor was cool and smelled of beeswax and the ghost of too many winter coats. A single lamp burned at the far end. The sitting room was exactly as described, small, practical, empty, with 2 chairs arranged near a fireplace that had been allowed to go out. They did not sit. Edmund stood near the fireplace, and she stood near the door, which was a choice she made deliberately, and which he acknowledged with nothing more than a slight shift of position that opened the room between them. He understood that she needed the exit available. She noted that he understood this.
What I'm about to tell you, I'm telling you against my brother's wishes.
Then perhaps you shouldn't tell me.
Perhaps not. But you will spend the next several months constructing an explanation from the available evidence, and the explanation you construct will be worse than the truth. I have thought about this carefully.
Have you?
I have thought about very little else for the past 3 weeks.
3 weeks. He had known for 3 weeks. Eleanor absorbed this the way you absorb information that changes the shape of a period of time, retroactively, reaching back to alter things that had already happened. 3 weeks ago, she had taken tea with Richard's mother and thought the afternoon went well. 3 weeks ago, she had written to her own mother with news of the wedding date. 3 weeks ago, Edmund Ashworth had known something she did not know and had been sitting with it.
Tell me,
he told her. Not all of it. She would learn later that he had given her the architecture without all the details, the shape of the thing without the sharpest edges. But he told her enough. Richard Ashworth had a debt. Not a small one. A debt accumulated over 18 months at the card tables of 3 separate clubs, in the particular way that such debts accumulate, slowly at first, then with the speed of something that has found a slope. The total sum was significant enough that, if it became known, it would reach beyond Richard himself and attach, as these things do, to the name, to the title, to the estate, to anyone connected to either, to a wife. Richard had ended the engagement because he had concluded, in the particular logic of a man who believes he is being noble, that releasing Eleanor from the connection before the debt surfaced was a form of protection. He had not asked her. He had not explained. He had simply made a decision about her future and enacted it in 20 words or fewer at the Pemberton Assembly on a Tuesday evening in March.
He thought he was protecting me
Yes.
by humiliating me in public.
He did not think of it that way.
No. I imagine he thought of himself as being quite decent about it.
Edmund said nothing. This was, Eleanor was beginning to understand, a thing he did occupied silences instead of filling them, let the weight of what had been said sit where it landed rather than immediately smoothing it over. It was an unusual quality. She was not sure yet whether she found it admirable or unnerving.
How bad is it? The debt?
Bad enough.
Can it be managed?
A pause. Something moved behind his eyes, calculation, she thought, or the decision of how much to give her.
That depends on several things.
Such as?
Whether Richard will allow it to be managed. He has certain ideas about what is his to carry alone. They are not always practical ideas.
And you disagree with him?
On this particular point, frequently.
Eleanor moved away from the door. Not toward him, she crossed to the window instead, which looked out onto a strip of dark garden, nothing visible through the glass but her own faint reflection and the lamp behind her. She looked at her reflection for a moment. The stillness was still there, intact, doing its work. She had not known until tonight how much it cost to maintain. She turned back.
Why did you ask me to dance?
I told you. I owe you.
You told me what you told me. I am asking why you did it, not what principle it served.
Something shifted in his expression, small, controlled, but there.
Because you were standing in the middle of that room holding a dance card and you were very still, and I know what that kind of stillness costs.
Eleanor turned back to the window. The garden beyond the glass was unchanged. She was not.
You should go, Mr. Ashworth. You have already done more than was required of you this evening.
Probably.
And considerably more than was wise.
Almost certainly.
He did not move immediately. She could see his reflection in the glass standing where he had been, hands at his sides, in the posture of a man who has said what he came to say and is deciding whether there is anything left worth saying. There apparently was not. He moved to the door. He stopped with his hand on the frame.
Miss Voss, for what it is worth, and I understand it may not be worth a great deal at this particular moment, my brother's reasoning was wrong. Not his intention, his reasoning.
She waited.
There is a difference between protecting someone and deciding for them. He has not yet learned it.
Then he was gone, and Eleanor was alone in the sitting room with the dead fireplace and the lamp and her own reflection in the dark window. She stood there for perhaps 2 minutes. Then she went back to the assembly. She danced twice more that evening, once with a colonel she had known for years, once with a young man whose name she forgot before she reached the carriage. She spoke to 9 people. She smiled when smiling was required. She gave no one anything to report. In the carriage home alone, she allowed herself to sit with what she actually felt. It was not grief, exactly. Or not only grief. It was the particular sensation of a future that has been removed before you had finished imagining it, the way a book disappears from your hand in a dream, and you are left with the shape of holding something that is no longer there. She thought about Edmund Ashworth and the way he had said it, not as comfort, not as philosophy, but as a fact he appeared to have arrived at through some experience of his own. As if he knew from the inside what the error felt like. She put this away. There was too much else to attend to. Her engagement was over. The reason for it was not public. She had perhaps a week, too, if she was careful before the absence of a wedding date became a topic of wider interest. She would need to be very precise about what she did and did not do. She arrived home at 11. Her mother was asleep. She did not wake her. On the writing desk, a letter. Richard's handwriting, which she had learned to recognize before she had learned much else about him. She sat with it unopened for a full minute. Then she broke the seal. It was short. 6 lines. It expressed regret in careful, measured language. It wished her well with the particular warmth of a man who believes his generosity in wishing someone well is itself a form of kindness. It contained no explanation, no acknowledgement that an explanation was owed, nothing that suggested he understood what the evening had cost her. It read like a letter written by a man who believed he had done the right thing and was therefore finished with the matter. Eleanor folded it carefully and placed it in the back of her writing desk drawer, behind a stack of household receipts. Then she sat at that desk for an hour without writing anything, and went to bed and lay in the dark staring at the ceiling. She slept badly. She was awake before 6. She dressed without ringing for her maid. She went downstairs and made tea herself in the kitchen because the house was not yet stirring and she did not want to explain to anyone why she was awake at this hour or what she was thinking. She was still thinking about the letter. Not its contents, she had disposed of those efficiently, but what its existence revealed, that Richard had written it last night before coming to speak with her this morning. He had composed his farewell before he had offered his apology. He had decided the matter was settled before he had given her the opportunity to respond. This bothered her more than the ending itself. She was on her second cup when she heard the front door. Then her mother's voice, then silence. Then footsteps, and her mother appeared in the kitchen doorway with an expression Eleanor had seen before, controlled, careful, carrying information she was not certain how to deliver. Richard Ashworth was in the entrance hall. Eleanor set down her cup. He was standing near the window when she came in the posture of a man who has arrived somewhere early and regrets it slightly. He looked up. For a moment, neither of them spoke, and Eleanor had the particular sensation of looking at someone she had known for the better part of a year and seeing for the first time a stranger. Not because he had changed, because she had changed her angle.
Eleanor, I wanted to.
I received your letter.
A beat of silence. She watched him recalibrate.
I thought speaking in person might also be.
The letter arrived first, Richard. You wrote your goodbye before you came to explain yourself. I find that clarifying.
He flinched. She had not intended to be kind, and she was not. Richard Ashworth was, by any external measure, a composed man. The kind of ease that comes from never having had serious cause to doubt one's position. He had been, for the duration of their engagement, attentive without being excessive, kind without being sentimental, entirely what a duke was supposed to be. It was only now, watching him stand in her entrance hall uncertain of his footing, that Eleanor understood how much of what she had taken for character had simply been the comfort of a man who had never been truly cornered.
I owe you an apology.
You owe me considerably more than that. But yes, that is a start.
What happened last night, the manner of it, I did not intend.
You intended exactly what happened. You chose that room at that hour in front of that assembly. You decided those were the appropriate conditions. I am not certain what you did not intend, unless you mean you did not intend for me to have feelings about it.
He flinched again. She watched him and felt something she had not expected, not anger, or not only anger, but a kind of clarity. The way a room looks when the window is cleaned. Everything the same. Everything in sharper relief.
I was trying to protect you.
I know.
Her voice was even. This seemed to unsettle him more than heat would have. He had perhaps expected distress, the kind of scene that would have allowed him to comfort and explain and emerge from the morning feeling he had handled something with grace. She was not going to give him that.
You were trying to protect me. By removing a decision from my hands and making it yourself? By choosing not to tell me there was a problem, because you had concluded that I did not need to know the problem in order to experience its consequences.
If the debt became public,
Then we would have faced it together. That is, I had understood the nature of what we were building.
Richard looked at her. Something moved across his face, complicated, not simple enough to be guilt or simple enough to be relief.
you knew. About the debt.
Eleanor said nothing. She let the silence do its work. He understood, from her stillness, that she did. She could see him reconstructing the last 12 hours, the assembly, the corridor, his brother's absence from the card room.
Edmund told you.
Someone told me. It does not matter who.
It matters a great deal, actually.
Your brother did what you would not. He told me the truth. You may be angry with him if you choose. I find I cannot recommend it.
Richard crossed to the fireplace. He stood with his back to her for a moment, one hand on the mantelpiece, and Eleanor watched him and thought about 14 dinners and the Ashworth dining room wallpaper. She thought about Edmund Ashworth crossing a ballroom floor with a request that had cost him something, even if she hadn't understood that yet at the time.
I cannot ask you to wait while I resolve this. It may take months. The exposure in the meantime.
I'm not asking you to ask me anything, Richard. I'm telling you that what you did last night was not protection. It was a decision made on my behalf without my knowledge or consent, dressed in the clothing of kindness. I would appreciate it if you did not do it again.
He turned. She met his eyes without difficulty. He looked, she thought, like a man arriving somewhere he should have reached some time ago and finding it colder than he had expected.
I am sorry. For the manner of it.
I know. Goodbye, Richard.
He left. Eleanor stood in the entrance hall for a moment after the door closed. The house was quiet around her. She became aware, gradually, of the particular quality of a morning that has already contained more than most mornings are asked to hold. Then she went back to the kitchen, poured the rest of the cold tea down the sink, and made a fresh pot. There was work to do. If you are enjoying this story, leave a like or drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. It's a small thing, but it helps the platform understand this kind of story is worth finding. Edmund Ashworth arrived at 10:30, which was, Eleanor would think later, either very good timing or very poor judgment, depending on how the morning went. She heard the knock from upstairs, heard her mother's voice, heard the particular cadence of an exchange that had not been anticipated. She came downstairs to find him standing in the entrance hall with his hat in his hands, his expression carrying that same quality from the night before, aware that he was imposing, committed to the imposition regardless. Her mother stood at the edge of the room with the carefully calibrated neutrality of a woman who has not yet decided what she thinks and intends to gather more information before committing. This was, Eleanor recognized, a problem she had not anticipated. Her mother had known nothing about the previous evening's events. She had been asleep when Eleanor arrived home, and Eleanor had not woken her. The appearance of a younger Ashworth brother, uninvited, the morning after the elder had ended the engagement, this was going to require explanation of a kind Eleanor had not yet composed. She made a decision.
Mr. Ashworth, come through.
She showed him into the morning room and closed the door before her mother could follow. On the other side of that door, she knew, her mother was now standing with an entirely new set of questions. She would address them later. One thing at a time. The morning room was smaller than the Pemberton sitting room. No convenient window to stand at. They sat, which was its own kind of negotiation, the distance of the chairs, the angle, the cup of tea she ordered out of habit and which arrived before she had decided what to do with it. Edmund held his hat. He did not touch the tea.
I came because I said more last night than I had planned to, and I wanted to ensure that what I said was not misapplied.
Misapplied how?
I watched you, in the corridor, when I told you the debt could be managed. There was a moment, very brief, where something shifted in your expression. You had already begun working on it before I finished the sentence.
Eleanor looked at him.
I want to know what you're planning before you act on it.
The directness of it landed without apology. Not rude, there was nothing aggressive in his manner, but entirely without the social padding that men of his position generally deployed when speaking to women about anything that touched on money or consequence. He was treating her like someone whose plan mattered. Like someone whose plan was already real. It was. She had been working on it since approximately 2 o'clock in the morning.
You said the debt can be managed, depending on several things.
Yes.
One of those things is whether Richard will accept help.
Yes.
Would he accept it from you?
A pause.
He would refuse it from me. We have a complicated history on the subject of who is responsible for what.
Then he needs to believe it comes from somewhere else.
Edmund sat forward slightly.
Go on.
My father had business dealings with 2 men who sit on the board of the chartered bank. He is gone now, but the relationships are not. If someone were to approach them quietly, not about Richard specifically, but about the broader category of debts of this nature acquired at certain clubs, there are mechanisms. Things that can be restructured. Made less visible.
She stopped. He was watching her with an expression she was beginning to recognize, not surprise exactly, but the visible revision of an assumption.
I'm not suggesting I can solve it entirely. I'm suggesting there may be a path that does not require Richard to know who made the first step.
That path would require you to use your father's connections on behalf of a man who ended your engagement without explanation.
Yes.
Why would you do that?
Eleanor considered the question. It deserved a real answer.
Because I spent the better part of a year believing I was going to be part of this family. I'm not going to be. But that does not mean I want the family to collapse. And because I dislike watching someone make an error for the wrong reasons when I am in a position to prevent it.
Edmund sat with this for a moment.
My brother will not thank you for this.
I'm not doing it for your brother.
The silence that settled between them was different from the ones in the corridor the night before. Those had been the silences of strangers navigating an unfamiliar situation. This one had the quality of a room that has just been rearranged, everything in a new position, the space between things changed. Edmund set his hat down on the side table. It was, Eleanor noticed, the first time since arriving that he had put it down.
There's a man named Fallow. He holds the largest portion of the debt. Not all of it, but enough that what he does determines what the others do. If he can be persuaded to restructure rather than call, the rest follows.
Do you know him?
By reputation, he is not unreasonable. He is careful about his own exposure. If the restructuring can be presented as serving his interests,
Then he does not need to be persuaded. He needs to be shown the arithmetic.
Something in Edmund's expression settled, not surprise anymore but recognition. As if a question he had been carrying had just answered itself.
yes, exactly that.
They talked for another 40 minutes. It was not a comfortable conversation. It involved numbers and careful navigation of what could and could not be attributed to whom, but it was, Eleanor found, deeply absorbing in the way that real problems are absorbing when the person across from you is not pretending they are simpler than they are. At some point, the tea went cold and neither of them noticed. At some point, her mother opened the door, surveyed them with their papers and their notebooks, and closed it again without a word. The quality of that silence was, Eleanor thought, precisely calibrated. Edmund gathered his notes and stood.
I will make contact with Fallow's associate by Thursday.
And I will write to Mr. Graves at the bank tomorrow morning.
She walked him to the door. On the step, he turned.
Miss Voss, I want to say something that is not strictly relevant to the matter at hand.
Then perhaps you shouldn't say it.
Probably. I'm going to say it anyway.
She waited.
Last night, when I asked you to dance, I told you I wanted to prevent you from constructing the wrong explanation. That was true. But it was not the whole truth.
The morning light was behind him. She could not entirely read his face.
Mr. Ashworth,
I know. I'm aware of what I am. I'm my brother's brother, and I have just helped dismantle the wreckage of something that was, until yesterday, yours. I have no standing to say anything on any other subject.
He put on his hat. He left. Eleanor stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him walk down the street with the purposeful stride of a man who has said more than he intended and has decided to live with it. She went back inside. Her mother was waiting in the morning room, seated, with the expression of a woman who has been patient for as long as patience is a reasonable strategy and has concluded that the moment for a different approach has arrived. Eleanor sat across from her. She told her what had happened, not all of it, but enough. Her mother listened without interrupting, which was itself a kind of gift. When Eleanor finished, her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "And the younger brother, is he trustworthy?" Eleanor thought about a man who had known something for 3 weeks and then crossed a ballroom floor because he had decided someone should. She thought about a hat placed deliberately on a side table. She thought about the arithmetic of Fallow's exposure, laid out without condescension, as though it had never occurred to him that she might not follow.
I think so. Yes.
Her mother nodded once, with the economy of a woman who has lived long enough to know that this is the more dangerous answer. There is a particular kind of person, you may have met one or been one. They show up in the difficult moment, not because they are required to, not because they will be thanked, but because they have looked at the situation and concluded that someone should, and they appear to be the someone available. They are, in my experience, the ones worth watching. Not always easy to be around, not always right, but worth watching. Eleanor Voss had spent nearly a year learning the particular way a duke cleared his throat before speaking in company. She was beginning to think she had been paying attention to the wrong brother. Richard believed he was protecting her. He just never thought to ask if she wanted to be protected that way. I've made that same mistake myself, decided I knew what was best for someone before I gave them the chance to say otherwise. Have you? Leave it in the comments. Every comment helps the platform put this kind of story in front of more people who are looking for it.